Helen Holloway had been widowed for 3 years when the friend request popped up on her Facebook page. At 72, she wasn't naive about the internet. Her daughter Sarah had warned her about scammers countless times. But there was something different about David Mitchell's profile. Real photos, thoughtful posts about woodworking and his late wife, comments from what appeared to be genuine friends. She almost didn't accept. Her finger hovered over the decline button for a full 10 seconds before curiosity won out. The first message came 2 days later. "Hello, Helen. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I noticed we're both in the Sunset Years book club group, and I loved your comment about The Nightingale. My late wife, Carol, adored that book. Would you be willing to share some other recommendations?" Helen smiled. It was harmless enough. She typed back a short list of historical fiction titles, expecting nothing more than a polite thank you. What she got instead was the beginning of a 3-month conversation that would change everything. David Mitchell, or whoever was behind the profile, was good. Exceptionally good. He never rushed, never asked for anything. He shared stories about his construction business in Houston, his 2 adult children who lived overseas, his golden retriever named Biscuit. He remembered details Helen mentioned in passing. Her grandson's baseball games, her Tuesday pottery classes, her favorite type of tea. "You're talking to him again," Sarah said one evening, noticing her mother's face illuminated by her tablet screen, a small smile playing at her lips. "His name is David. We're just friends." Sarah sat down at the kitchen table, her expression serious. "Mom, I need you to be careful. These romance scammers—" "I know, honey. I'm not senile." Helen's voice had an edge to it. "We talk about books and gardening, that's all." But it wasn't all. Slowly, carefully, David had been weaving himself into the fabric of Helen's daily life. Good morning messages, afternoon check-ins, late-night voice messages where his Texas drawl felt warm and genuine. He sent her pictures, always slightly blurry, always believable. Him at a construction site, him with Biscuit, him holding up a book she'd recommended with a thumbs up. When he first mentioned video chatting, he apologized profusely. "My camera's been acting up. I'm not very good with technology, Helen. I hope that's okay." She assured him it was. After all, she understood. Technology could be frustrating. Looking back later, Helen would pinpoint this as the moment she knew something was wrong. The moment her instincts, honed by 7 decades of reading people, started screaming. But David had done something clever. He'd made his technological incompetence part of his charm, part of what made him seem real. The crisis came in month 4. "Helen, I hate to burden you with this." David's voice message sounded strained, exhausted. "There's been an accident at one of my job sites. A worker was injured and I'm being sued. My insurance should cover it, but they're dragging their feet. And my lawyer needs a retainer. I just don't have right now. My accounts are all tied up in investments. I know we haven't known each other that long, but I didn't know who else to turn to." He didn't ask. Not directly. That was the artistry of it. Helen sat in her living room, the tablet in her lap, and felt her heart rate slow. Not with anxiety, but with a strange cold clarity. This was it. This was the play. She thought about Sarah's warnings, about the news stories she'd seen, about the thousands of people, mostly older women, who lost their life savings to romance scammers every year. She thought about her late husband Thomas, who'd been a police officer for 30 years and who'd taught her to trust her gut. Her gut was telling her that David Mitchell didn't exist, that his construction business was fake, that somewhere, probably in another country, someone was running the same script with dozens of lonely people at once. Helen could have blocked him, should have blocked him. But as she sat there in the fading afternoon light, another thought occurred to her. What if she could stop him? Helen's first call was to her son-in-law, Gary, who worked in cybersecurity. She explained everything, the friend request, the months of conversations, the sob story about the lawsuit. "Mom, you need to report this to the FBI immediately," Gary said, his voice tight with worry. "I will. But Gary, I need you to help me understand something first. If I play along, if I pretend to fall for it, Could they trace where the money goes? There was a long pause. That's not something you should be involved in. But could they? Another pause. Maybe, if you're working directly with law enforcement and they set up a sting. But Helen, these people can be dangerous. They're thousands of miles away behind a computer screen. We don't know that. Some of these operations have people in the States. Helen's mind was made up. I'm calling the FBI, but I'm not just reporting him. I'm offering to help catch him. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center connected her with Special Agent Lisa Chen, who worked in the Cyber Division's Financial Fraud Unit. Helen expected skepticism, maybe condescension. What she got was immediate, focused interest. Mrs. Holloway, I need to be very clear with you, Agent Chen said during their first phone call. What you're proposing is essentially becoming an undercover operative. It's dangerous, it's time-consuming, and there's no guarantee of success. I understand. These operations are often sophisticated criminal networks. Some are based overseas in countries where we have limited jurisdiction. Others have domestic connections. If they suspect you're cooperating with law enforcement, they could become aggressive. Agent Chen, my husband was a police officer for 30 years. I understand the risks, but I also understand that this man, or whoever he is probably doing this to other people right now. Other women like me who might actually send the money. I can help you stop that. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, are you free tomorrow? I'd like to meet in person. Agent Chen arrived at Helen's house with another agent, a young man named Marcus Webb who specialized in financial crimes. They spread papers across her dining room table, printouts of David's profile, transcripts of their messages, technical analyses of the photos he'd sent. The photos are all stolen from a real person's social media, Agent Webb explained, pointing to his laptop screen. The actual David Mitchell lives in Oregon and has no idea his identity is being used. The phone numbers route through multiple VoIP services, which makes them nearly impossible to trace without extensive resources. So how do we catch them? Helen asked. Agent Chen leaned forward. We need you to do exactly what they expect. Express concern about David's situation. Offer to help. They'll give you instructions for transferring money. But instead of your money, we'll set up a controlled account with marked funds. Marked funds? Digital breadcrumbs. Once the money enters their system, we can track it through various accounts and exchanges. These operations usually involve multiple people, the person doing the romance scam, money mules who transfer funds, and the organizers who coordinate everything. If we're lucky, we can identify not just your scammer, but the entire network. Over the next week, Helen became a student. She learned about wire fraud, money laundering, and cryptocurrency exchanges. She learned how these operations worked, often young men in West Africa or Southeast Asia, working in teams, sometimes in office-like settings with quotas and managers. She learned about the scripts they followed, the psychological manipulation techniques they employed, but most importantly, she learned how to act. You need to be enthusiastic, but not suspiciously so, Agent Chen coached her. Express some hesitation, but let them talk you through it. These people are experts at manipulation. They'll have an answer for every concern. Helen practiced her responses. She set up a routine of reporting every message, every call, every new development to her FBI handlers, and then she sent the message that would set everything in motion. David, I've been thinking about what you said. I hate that you're going through this. I have some money saved. It's not much, but if it would help with your lawyer. The response came within minutes. Relief, gratitude, but still no direct ask. David was too smart for that. Helen, I could never ask you to do that. Your savings are for you, for your family. You said your accounts are tied up. How long until you can access them? My financial advisor says 3 to 4 weeks. But the lawsuit, Helen, they're threatening to put a lien on my business. Everything I've built for 30 years could be gone. Back and forth they went, David protesting, Helen insisting. It was a dance, and both knew the steps. In her living room, Helen had Agent Chen on speakerphone, feeding her lines, helping her navigate the conversation. Finally, after 3 days of this choreographed ballet, David relented. Are you absolutely sure? I'll pay you back the moment my account's clear, with interest. I'm sure. Tell me what you need. The amount started at $15,000 for the lawyer's retainer. Helen didn't blink. I'll need to go to my bank, she typed. Can it wait until tomorrow? Of course. Helen, I can't tell you what this means to me. You're an angel. That evening, Agent Chen and Agent Webb returned to Helen's house with a representative from the FBI's Financial Operations Division. They set up the trap account, $15,000 of government money tagged with digital markers that would allow them to follow its path through the financial underworld. Once you send this, things will move quickly, Agent Chen warned. They'll likely come back for more. The story will escalate. You need to be prepared for that. Helen nodded. She was prepared, more prepared than they knew. The money transfer was arranged through a complicated series of steps involving wire transfers and cryptocurrency exchanges, deliberately confusing, designed to make Helen feel out of her depth. At each stage, David was there with a voice message or a text, guiding her through it, reassuring her. You're doing great. I know this is complicated, just a little bit more. Within 24 hours of the money hitting the first account, Agent Webb's team was tracking it. Singapore, then Hong Kong, then a dozen smaller accounts, fragmenting and recombining like drops of mercury. They're good, Agent Webb admitted during one of their evening briefings, but we're following the trail. We've already identified 3 money mules in the U.S. and 2 coordination accounts in Malaysia. But David wasn't done, not by a long shot. 3 days after the first transfer, the story changed. The lawsuit was worse than he thought. They were freezing all his assets. He needed another $25,000 just until the judge issued a ruling. Helen played her part beautifully. She hesitated. She worried. She called her daughter while David was listening and had a staged argument about dipping into her savings. Mom, this is crazy. Sarah had agreed to participate, her voice Oscar-worthy in its concern. You barely know this man. I know him well enough, Helen replied, her own voice perfectly calibrated between defensive and determined. He needs help, Sarah. I'm not going to turn my back on him. The second transfer went through, then a third. By the end of 2 weeks, Helen had sent $73,000 to David Mitchell's various crises, and the FBI was building a case that spanned 4 countries. The break came from an unexpected source, one of the money mules in the United States. A college student who'd been recruited with promises of easy money got nervous and started cooperating with law enforcement. Through him, they identified a coordinator in Houston. Not the Houston where David claimed to live, but a real person in Houston who was managing the American side of the operation. His name was Marcus Davies, and he was the linchpin they needed. We're executing warrants tomorrow, Agent Chen told Helen during a late-night phone call. In Houston, Chicago, and 3 locations in Malaysia and Nigeria. It's a coordinated operation with international law enforcement. Will you get David? David is probably several people. The profile is managed by a team, different people for different times of day, different aspects of the relationship. But yes, we're confident we'll identify the main operators. Helen felt something loosen in her chest. 2 months of performance, 2 months of pretending to be a lonely old woman falling for a con, 2 months of carefully worded messages and staged phone calls. Can I tell him? Agent Chen paused. Tell him what? That I know, that he lost. Mrs. Holloway, that's not... Please, before you shut it all down, give me 5 minutes. There was a long silence. Then, 5 minutes, after we execute the warrants. I'll call you. The call came at 6:47 a.m. We have them. You're clear to proceed. Helen opened her tablet with steady hands. She'd been composing this message in her head for days. David, or whoever you are, I want you to know that I knew. Not from the beginning, but close enough. I knew when you first mentioned the lawsuit. I knew because I've lived long enough to recognize a performance when I see one. I'm not a foolish old woman desperate for attention. I'm a widow who had 50 years with a man who taught me to trust my instincts and protect the vulnerable. While you thought you were scamming me, I was working with the FBI. Every dollar I sent was tracked. Every conversation was recorded. Right now, as you read this, Law enforcement is executing warrants in 4 countries, dismantling your operation. The money you thought you were stealing. It's being used to build a case that will put you and your associates in prison. I hope whatever you got out of this was worth it. Because it's over. Helen Holloway. She hit send and set the tablet down. Within minutes, the message showed as read. Then the profile disappeared. Blocked. Helen smiled. Let him panic. Let him scramble. Let him realize that sometimes the prey becomes the predator. The operation resulted in 17 arrests across 4 countries. Marcus Davies, the Houston coordinator, became a cooperating witness and helped identify dozens of additional money mules and operators. The FBI estimated that the network had defrauded victims of more than $2.3 million over 2 years. Most importantly, they recovered Helen's identity documents and personal information that the scammers had harvested, preventing potential identity theft. Agent Chen invited Helen to the FBI field office 6 weeks after the arrest. In a conference room filled with agents and analysts, she presented Helen with a Civilian Service Award. "What you did was extraordinary," Agent Chen said. "You put yourself at risk to help us dismantle a criminal network that was hurting vulnerable people every day. You should be proud." Helen accepted the award, but what she said next surprised everyone in the room. "I didn't do this for an award. I did it because I kept thinking about the other women, the ones who did send their money, the ones who really believed someone loved them and needed them. I was lucky. I saw through it. But I know there are people out there who didn't, who lost everything and are too ashamed to tell anyone." She looked around the room at the young faces, the agents who'd worked tirelessly to follow the digital breadcrumbs she'd helped create. If my story helps even one person recognize a scam, helps one person understand that asking for help isn't weakness, then it was worth every uncomfortable moment. The room broke into applause. 6 months after the FBI operation concluded, Helen started a blog called The Catfish Grandma. She shared her story in detail, explaining the red flags she'd noticed, the techniques the scammers had used, and the psychology behind romance fraud. The blog went viral. News outlets picked it up. Helen appeared on morning shows and podcasts. She partnered with AARP to create educational materials about online romance scams. "I never thought I'd become an internet celebrity at 73, she told Sarah over dinner one evening. "But if it helps people, I'll keep doing it." Sarah squeezed her mother's hand. "Dad would be so proud of you, Mom." "I think so, too. He always said the best way to honor the people we've lost is to protect the people we can still save." Helen's inbox was full of messages, some from people who'd been scammed and found comfort in knowing they weren't alone. Others from people who'd recognized the warning signs in their own online relationships and broken free before losing money. But one message stood out. It came from a woman named Patricia in Ohio. "Dear Helen, I was 3 days away from sending $50,000 to a man I met online when I read your story. Everything he said, everything he did, it was exactly what you described. You saved my life savings. You saved me from the shame and heartbreak that would have followed. Thank you for being brave enough to share your story. You're a hero to more people than you'll ever know." Helen read the message twice, then printed it out and put it in a frame on her desk, next to a photo of Thomas in his police uniform, smiling. She'd done what he would have done. She'd protected someone. And in doing so, she'd discovered that being 73 didn't mean she was done making a difference. It just meant she'd had more time to learn how. The FBI estimates that romance scams cost victims $547 million in 2021 alone, with the median individual loss being $2,400. The average victim is a woman over 50. If you or someone you know is involved in an online relationship with someone asking for money, report it to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov. You are not alone, and it is not your fault. For more stories, please subscribe to this channel. Have you ever encountered con men, or has anyone you know encountered them? Please let us know in the comment section, and I hope this will help more women be aware of these scammers.